what exactly is your background as an educator and an OEA member?
Well, currently I'm a second grade teacher, and I've been teaching second grade for quite a while now, but I've pretty much taught everything K-5.
Wow.
And so I work at Adams Elementary here in Eugene, and I've been teaching for close to 25 years now. I also am very active in the Eugene Education Association. I'm on the executive committee, and I also chair our external organizing committee. And then I'm also the Eugene Education Association's board member for the Oregon Education Association.
Wow.
So I'm very passionate about education. I love my job, and I'm also a very strong believer in the power of union membership. I believe in the power of the solidarity of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what is the, you said you've taught basically K-5. Real talk, what's your favorite grade to teach? Like, what's just that like perfect? I have a first grader who probably is now, and I don't know what's going to go on, but maybe is done with first grade in the sense of, I don't know what's happening with the rest of the school year. We'll be starting second grade next year. What's that sweet spot? What's your favorite grade to teach?
Definitely second grade. I taught kindergarten for 5 years, and I love that too. But I love second grade. And the reason I love second grade is that it's a year that you really get to see kids bloom with their reading and with their writing. And I just love supporting with them with that, and love seeing how empowering that is for them. They just really pop out and shine when they become fluent readers and when they become fluent writers. And I also love second grade because I think they are incredibly empathetic and incredibly moral. And I think we should let them run the world because, they have this strong moral sense of what's right and what's wrong, right? We share, we wash our hands,
right.
And people need to be taken good care of. So I just love the world perspective of second graders.
I think that's really fair. My son, while he is finishing first grade, is an older first grader. So he's a September birthday. So I feel like he has a lot of the maturity of a second grader. He's been reading for a long time. In fact, I'm sitting here at my kitchen table. I can't know if you can see these, but he's super into Pokemon. He's been listing, going through this Pokemon book. Yeah, and listing every single attack that every Pokemon has. And so he's been doing a lot of that stuff. But we were driving by the movie theater the other day, and his little sister, who is 3, is very excited about watching the Trolls World Tour, the second Trolls movie. And the movie theater was empty. The parking lot was empty. And my son looked at her and said, her name is Imogene. He said, Imogene, I know that you might look at that empty movie theater and think, oh man, I'm so mad that we don't get to watch that movie, but we're not going to go watch that movie so that everybody gets to stay safe and doesn't get the coronavirus. And I just that was just from his own heart. It wasn't like, oh man, we don't get to watch the movie. We don't get to go to the theater because we go to the theater a lot. His instinctive response was to be empathetic about the fact that we shouldn't be mad that we're not seeing the movie. Instead, that we should be empathetic that we're trying to keep everybody safe. And so I think he's kind of got that second grade level worldview just because he's a little bit older than a lot of second graders. So how long have you been teaching?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that age group is really remarkable in that way.
Yeah, they are. And so how long have you been here in Oregon? Are you a longtime Oregonian?
I've been living in Oregon since, 1991. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm from New York, and definitely am an East Coaster, New Yorker at heart in a lot of ways. I still have a lot of family back there. And but I've been living in Oregon a long time now, and this is where my roots are. I've done a couple of ventures teaching overseas. I taught in South Korea and I taught in Venezuela. And every time, even though I loved being overseas, every time I was there, I really noticed how much I missed Oregon. And I think throughout this whole crisis, just the way people in my community are responding makes me realize why I love it here and why I stay here.
Well, now I have more context to why you and Val Hoyle love each other so much. She's an East Coaster, New England woman as well.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to connect with your family that's in New York in the past couple of days? Is everybody doing okay?
Yeah, my family in New York is doing okay. I have a cousin who has a toddler um, who recently finished a battle with cancer.
Wow.
And so they have a lot of concerns because he is still receiving chemotherapy. And so he's autoimmune compromised. And so staying in touch with them. And my sister is being pretty heavily impacted because she's a small business owner.
Oh,
And I think that's helped me understand how, I mean, really the impact that this is having on small business owners. And I'm worried that she may lose her business. And I
wow.
think that's a real concern that a lot of people have.
What is her business?
She owns a physical fitness therapy clinic, and she also has a fitness center. And so the fitness center obviously is shutting down, and then they're, you know, having a lot of decline in the number of patients that are coming. And I haven't talked to her in the last couple of days. They may even have had to shut the clinic down completely as
Oh,
well. But last week she had to meet with her employees and talk about cutting their hours or who she was going to lay off. It's been really hard.
yeah, no, I imagine that. And how are you adapting to being home and out of the classroom and away from your kids?
Well, if I think back to the last day that I was with my students, I would say that was really bittersweet. I mean, we had a work day on the Friday. I'm trying to remember back to, so the Friday before we basically shut down, we had a work day. So on that Thursday, when I have a class meeting. So let me back up a little bit. I have a class meeting at the end of every day where I do more of a social emotional check-in with my
Mm.
students. And we were saying goodbye on that Thursday, knowing, assuming that we didn't have school on Friday, but that we would be coming back for another week before spring break. And so we didn't know at that time that we wouldn't be coming back to school that following week. And when I said goodbye to them, it was assuming I would see them again on Monday. And we did talk about the coronavirus at that time. And again, it was amazing how upbeat and positive they were. But when I think back to it, it was very bittersweet because I thought I would be seeing them again after that. And it's hard not being in the classroom. I think one, educators were really committed to our students, and we're committed to the families we work with. And we are also people that are used to being really active, like really busy. I mean, I'm in my classroom every day by 6:30,
Mm.
and not being able to continue to do the things I usually do every day is really challenging. So I have been working on writing letters to my students,
Oh.
and I'm going to try and connect with them in that way. But I really do miss being in the classroom with them. And I'm just not someone who uh, doesn't keep busy all the time. I'm guessing you might be able to sympathize with that. I'm used to being really busy with things.
Yeah, I'm used to being really busy. I'll tell you, I'm homeschooling my 7-year-old and or 7.5-year-old and 3-year-old. So my daughter, her daycare hasn't closed, but I made the choice to not put her in daycare anymore, just to A, practice social distancing, and B, to leave those daycare spots for frontline workers, healthcare providers, grocery store clerks, construction workers, other folks cleaning crews who might need a spot for their kids. So I've chosen to not put my daughter into daycare, even though her daycare is still open. So I'm, homeschooling. So I would say that it's a different kind of busy now when I'm here with my kids, and I co-parent with their dad. So I get them for basically 2 days and he has them for 2 days. And so the days that they are here, it is a different kind of busy. It's probably the busy that you're used to. It is just a nonstop. In fact, I've even tried a couple of times to have a call with my team, my campaign team, and not even the large team, like me and my campaign manager, my communications director, and even in a 10-minute phone call, I will get interrupted multiple times. I think I had to end a phone call 2 days ago because my son I was trying to teach him 3-digit subtraction with regrouping, because I'm using a 2nd grade math curriculum book for him because he's a little bit ahead, and he was getting frustrated and I wasn't able to answer his questions. So like I ended up having to get off the call because he'd gone into his room and was crying over a math problem. So like, I gotta go, you guys, I got like a kid crying over math. I gotta go take care of this. So
Yeah.
it's a different kind of busy than I'm used to. I would say for me, it's a much harder and more difficult kind of busy, because the busy I'm used to is at least where I have some control over what my next hour will look like. Whereas when I'm homeschooling a 7.5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I have no control over what, and then I have a lot of, why is she doing this? And she's getting to play. And I'm like, well, I don't have to have her ready for 2nd grade next year. I have to get you ready for 2nd grade. So it has been challenging. What tips do you have for families like me? I'm sure there are a lot of parents and caregivers and grandparents and aunts and uncles who are out there homeschooling young kids for the first time. What, off the top of your head, do you have any hot tips for us to make this more manageable?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind, and that maybe a lot of people forget about teachers, is that we are not just focused on the academic development of the young humans that we work with, right? We are focused on their social, emotional development as well. And I've definitely been seeing 2 ends of the spectrum, right? How do we support their academic development? But I also think about, what are they going to remember about this time, right? What are they going to remember? They're not going to remember how to carry and borrow or to regroup, right? We use the term regrouping now.
Yeah.
They're going to remember what it felt like at this time.
Oh, that's really good.
And so I want to encourage parents and care providers and any family that has young children at home to think about the emotional impact of what you're doing with your children. We know kids learn through play. We know they have a tremendous capacity for creative expression. So I would encourage people to think about the things that you're doing with them that are just about connecting. We'll catch these kids up. Educators, when we go back to school next year, we will be fully aware of where we need to support them. I'm guessing school districts will have a plan in place where maybe we will teach as a 2nd grade teacher, I will teach the end of the 1st grade curriculum, and then I'll begin the 2nd grade curriculum. We're accustomed to meeting these gaps. But right now, I think that families need to play games with their kids. They need to do fun things, get outside, go for a walk, write letters to people that they're not able to see, make Play-Doh, make crayons, measure things, bake things, measure how much space is in your living room and figure out the perimeter, all those types of activities. Have fun with them and follow their lead, because they're going to remember what it felt like at this time. Read books, talk about the books, do all of those things, act out stories, do all of those things that are going to support them emotionally and socially. And I think that that's what they're going to remember.
Wow, that is, I'm like getting a little emotional. Like, that's really profound, because I don't think that has been my focus. I've been very focused on, not letting him fall behind and making sure that he's doing, and my son does tend to like schoolwork. So I think a little bit of schoolwork, but I definitely have had a couple of battles with him over schoolwork and finishing stuff. And I think that I'm also thinking, how is he going to remember this time? Is he going to remember it being frustrating, and I wish I was back at school because I don't like being homeschooled by my mom? And that's not the impression I want him to have. I want him to remember feeling connected and safe and knowing that everything is going to be okay. And so that what you just said, like, really hit me and it teared me up a little bit, because it really, my daughter has no idea what's going on. She's just like thrilled that we're all together. But my son is aware that he's not in school because of this virus. And I have not been as focused on how he's going to feel. So thank you. I actually feel like a pressure off, to not worry about, oh man, how much math are you doing with them? It's like, you know what, just read stories and have fun and bake and make Play-Doh. I think that's a great, and go outside. We've been trying to do these little outside. We go on the deck and do these. I do movement every hour. So I've been doing like 5 minutes of this teacher who does like PE on YouTube, Joe something, like Australian accent. So we'll do, and then we'll come back inside. But that's really profound. So thank you for saying that. I think that I and a lot of other caregivers out there are going to feel a big relief by what you just said, that you're not like, okay, check out the curriculum guidelines and make sure they're following this, but it's no, just the big picture is how are they going to remember this time felt? And that is, it's very Maya Angelou of you. They're not going to remember what we said. We're going to remember they're not going to remember what we said. They're going to remember how we made them feel during this time. I think that's really profound. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I'm guessing not everybody's going to agree with me on that, but I do think when we think about how young children's brains develop, we know that trauma impairs how their brain is able to learn. And so we can look at this through trauma-informed perspective, that this time can be very traumatizing for them. And so I really think focusing on the social and emotional well-being of children, particularly young children at this time, is really important. I actually saw, I think it might have been Jillian, I think she posted a video of her son having a play date with another child via Zoom or Skype or something. You know, they need that, the kids who are older need that social connection as well. And I think I know a lot of educators who teach at the high school level that are really concerned about the mental and the mental health. A lot of high school educators who are concerned about the mental health of their students, because high school students really want to be in contact with each other, right? They're really focused on socializing right now. And I think this is really challenging for them. And I think for high school teachers, they know that home is also not always a safe place for some of the students they work with. And I think that that is probably a really big concern. I know that I've been hearing reports of the potential for increased suicide in that age group because of this. And so I know through the process of the SSA, for the Student Success Act, one of the big reasons that educators fought so hard for additional investments in schools was increased mental health supports in our school districts. And so I know that that is something that a lot of teachers are really concerned about, is the impact that this pandemic has on the mental health and well-being of our students.
Well, and I was going to ask you that because, and obviously I'm not asking specific to your classroom because for privacy reasons, but in general, as an educator, what are your concerns about some kids, you know, going home to environments that, you know, suddenly it's, I mean, I'm very concerned as a legislator about increases in domestic violence during this time when folks are in the homes together, maybe parents who aren't used to spending all day with kids, who haven't had that experience of spending all day with kids, you know, partners that maybe have conflict having to spend all day together, stressing about rent and food and electricity and losses of jobs and sickness and health insurance. And what concerns do you have, and what can we do you think to address those concerns about kids maybe spending a lot of time at home right now in maybe not the most supportive and safe environments?
Right. And so I think the first thing I would want to start off by saying is that I really believe that every parent is doing the best job that they can, given the circumstances that they're dealing with. And you're correct, like families are facing housing instability, they're facing food shortage issues, they're facing supporting their children at home in a way that they've never been challenged with before. So I believe that everyone's doing the best they can in this situation. But I think that families are facing, you know, just at the basic level of need. So families need food, they need shelter, and we know that there are families that are not housed stably. We know there are families that have food access issues, and I think at those very basic levels, those are the most important ways that we can be supporting the families that we work with. You know, if we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If we can meet those basic needs first, then I think we're at a starting point where we can think about the other things. So I think it was a good start that the governor passed an order that there will be no evictions, right? I think seeing school districts and educators make sure that students still have access to food is really critical. I know locally here that our food service workers are doing an amazing job making sure that students and families can pick up food at the school, at several schools. And I know statewide that educators are working to make sure that there is food access. So I think those things are really, really critical. In terms of the mental health well-being of the students that we work with, I know that there are some efforts to create access to mental health through online platforms, but I think that we need to be prepared when we come back to school to deal with the ramifications of what has happened during this time. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I think about what we need to do, I think about the fact that yesterday I read something that Governor Brown said that we may not even be able to fund our basic services because of the economic impact that this pandemic is having on our state. And so my first thought was we need to prioritize those basic services. We need to prioritize the healthcare, the food, the housing, and investments in education in our state moving forward. And that needs to be a priority. We need to start at the basic level for the things that our families need once we get through this crisis. And so I can't imagine right now what that's going to look like, but I would really hope that our government prioritizes the dollars needed to make sure that all children and that all families have the supports that they're going to need once we come out on the other side of this.
I agree. And before we say goodbye, what's one thing you've done on a lighter note just to entertain yourself while you've been at home? Some new show you've discovered, a book you've been reading, a new house project that you've done? Is there, or like I did, for example, I did Zoom cocktails with a couple of girlfriends last night. It just felt so good to just like, we each had a cocktail and we were like in our different places and we just did it. What's something that you've done that you wouldn't have done or hadn't done prior to being stuck at home that kind of has helped you for your own mental health to kind of get through this in a lighter way?
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
The Zoom cocktail sounds fun. I think getting outside is really important to me. And so I have been taking a lot of walks. I have more time for that. I'm really fortunate that I have an amazing partner who is very supportive of me. And yesterday we went for a walk to do some bird watching. And those are definitely things that I love to do, but I have a little more time to do it now. I also think that staying socially engaged for me is really critical to my mental health. So I'm still writing my state representatives about critical issues. I'm still writing my federal representatives about critical issues. So I'm continuing to stay socially engaged because those are the things that are important to me.
Well, I'm glad. And Lisa, thank you for using this as one way to stay socially engaged. Thank you Eugene, for your tips on homeschooling. I'm going to take that to heart. I'm looking at the schedule, like literally in my living room, I'm looking at the schedule that I made for my son. And I'm like, you know what? I think the first thing we're going to do when he comes home tomorrow is we're going to like cut it up, because it's very like regimented, and he just hasn't been loving that. Like there's been a lot of, pushing and pulling and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think this is fun. So I think that we'll instead just move, I think measuring things, cutting, making crafts, and just see if we have a better feeling about homeschooling if I just kind of get rid of the schedule and just have a little bit more fun, and remember this is about how this is going to feel and not just about you know, whether or not he learns subtraction with regrouping now or next fall, because he'll learn it just fine next fall. So thank you so much. And thank you for being an educator. Thank you for the years and years of service. And as I said at the OEA convention, when I spoke, you know, just as one kid whose life was changed by Oregon teachers, there are hundreds of thousands of Oregon kids who could also say thank you. So at least let me speak for myself and on behalf of all of them and say thank you for the work that you do and the safety that you provide for generations of Oregon kids.
Well, thank you very much, Shemia. And I wanted to thank you too for reaching out and wanting to connect with an educator. I think that says a lot about you. And I think that your story really impacted me at the Oregon Education Association PAC convention because I come from a background where I had a lot of challenges, and I understand the power that education can have. I had some educators that gave me a hand up, and I think that your story impacted a lot of educators at that convention, which is why we wanted to endorse you in your Secretary of State race. And so thanks for reaching out to me. Thanks for being an ally to working families, and thanks for being an ally to teachers.
You got it. All right. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy going on that walk today.